So we have a new guest joining us in the studio. His name is Abdullahi Alas. He's a columnist, a governance and policy analyst. He's in the Situation Room here with us. Good morning.
Good morning, my brother.
Karibu sana, my brother.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Been watching and I was asking myself, hawa watu watakutambua lini?
That's an honest question. That's a very honest question. And it deserves an honest answer. Kila kitu na wakati wake.
Cometh the day, cometh the hour.
Yes.
Finally, you made it.
Finally.
Karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you. We're going to discuss.
Yeah.
Asante.
Thank you.
We want to discuss, the politics of the day, the high cost of living, mass action calls, the dollar issue. There's a lot that's happening in the country. And there's politics, there's governance, there's reality of life. We want to mix all those things and find out where do we sit. As you know, every guest who comes here is welcomed by City Muga with the day's proverb. City's proverb this week is not coming from any country. It's coming from a book, which is as old as he is.
The book is called Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. But our guest mentioned something interesting at the beginning. So since today is a day of change, I'm going to ask him to tell us about the Somali proverb he had in mind.
Thank you very much. The proverb I will say it in Somali so that people will know that, and then we'll translate in English. They say that benta the hore, runta the dembe ayeu, bahsata. Old lies destroy your new truth.
Is that not an
Old lies destroy your new truth. Hey.
Say it in Somali again.
Benta hore.
Benta the hore, runta the dambe ayeu, bahsata. Bas bahda.
Me, the one I've gotten is aye. That's the word which I have
And
heard.
bas bahda.
Yes, I've heard on occasion.
Bas bahda is the truth or is it a lie?
Yes?
Bas bahda.
Bas bahda.
What is that?
It's a different thing.
It's not the truth or the lie?
No.
What does it mean?
Well, every language has its own very grammatical semantics. So there is no language you can directly translate. But now, basbah is that what you do now will haunt you later.
It has consequences.
It has consequences.
In the future.
In the future. Yeah.
Bas bahda.
Yes.
Okay. And bentada.
Bentada, your lies.
Your lies.
Yes.
Bentada. What's the truth?
Runtada.
Runtada.
Yes.
Bentada. Runtada.
Yes.
And for me, aye.
Yes, the acceptance of either.
Continue doing that
affirmation.
and you'll have basbada. Thank you very much for that proverb.
Thank you very much.
Your old lies will destroy your new truths.
Yeah.
Indeed. You can't put old wine in new wineskins. Maybe.
It's just good to be honest all the time because I come from thinking that why do you lie? Do you fear people?
So the day you come up with the truth, people will still remember your lie. Is like,
you've been lying all through. Then I've lied to Muga maybe 10 times, and then everything we said, like when Edna called me yesterday, I'm the one who reached out to her. I'm the one who reached out to you. Now, if I told her that I'm going to be at studio at 7:45, that's what she said. I was here at 7:30 because I left my home at 7, but I woke up at 4 in preparation of the same. So you guys called me at 8. My phone is off. You invite me another day. My phone is either off or I have excuses.
Yeah.
And then the third day I come here lecturing people about the truth or timing or anything. Muga will look at me like, who the hell do you think you are lecturing Kenyans over the truth? We invited you twice here and you could not even make it. Simple appointment. So it's just good to be honest because I come from a principle. I grew up with my dad and he used to say, why do you lie? Why do you tell lie to people? Do you fear men? Tell men the truth and go home. Why do you lie to a person? Do you fear them? No. Someone asks you for money. The amount you have is not enough. Don't tell him you don't have money. Tell him what I have, I cannot give out. Yeah, just tell him the truth. I have some money, but I have it. It's not enough for me and you. So I'm sorry, maybe next time. But when you say you don't have, you have money. You're lying. Yeah, you just tell them, I can't. I have 100 shillings. I want to use it for lunch. Unless you want to eat lunch with me, I can't give it to you. It's just honest. And
Always be truthful.
just be.
Always be truthful.
Yeah.
It defines you. There's a lot that's happening in the country, Abdullahi. And you're a columnist, you're a governance and policy analyst.
A journalist first.
A journalist first.
Yeah.
Okay. So where do you practice your journalism? Or how do you?
First of all, when I finished high school and I joined journalism back in 2006, 2007, it wasn't paying well. You remember how you start journalism. So I opted to work in the humanitarian world. So I went into more of communication in Somalia over the last 11 years. So I was media and communication coordinator, coordinating communication staff in NGOs, way better than studios in the early ages. Journalism pays later on, but in the early ages, it wasn't paid. So I practiced in Somalia most of the times, helping NGOs in community strategies, doing documentaries for them, this and that. And in between, I saw now again, why should I go for a master's in journalism? I went for MSc in governance and security at African Nazarene. That is when I came to realize that there is a lot I didn't know in matters government. So I started writing for the Star. I sent a lot of articles to the Standard. I don't know whether they're bureaucracies or my articles weren't good enough, but they were. I didn't have the chance to be published here, but I was published in The Nation sometimes, but Star mostly. Continental with Gerald Bitok. Yeah, contributed few to other online in Somalia. Yeah, so.
Okay. So you said there's something that you learned, you realized that you did not know a lot of about governance.
Yeah.
What was this?
That government does not feed people, it governs people. Its work is to create an environment where people can thrive, state to make sure there is security, make sure there is physical discipline, so that projects that were planned for through the Ministry of Planning are implemented and followed up, given access of the country. You do research, that's why we have Kenya Bureau of Standard coming up with data. But when I studied that, then I started traveling because I'm from Mandera County. I've mainly worked in Somalia and part of northern Kenya. I have realized that the model we took in our governance theory was one that was controlled by elites, just like other countries. But our cake was smaller. When we got independence, our African brothers had the same mentality of the white man, but they were in black skin. So the foundation they set for us was that of accumulation of wealth. If you look at the people who are rich in this country, mainly they're either descendants of political leaders or people who did business with government. I went to a press in Runda where a cousin of mine was looking at plots. And every plot, every acre, I think we were told 60 million. And the guy wanted to buy 10 acres. So it was told to me that they said it's 600 million. So I asked, who is this guy? And then I went to him and interacted with him because he wasn't that old. I mean, he was 50, 48. I got interested and I told him, you know, the journalism in Mekiklin, like, who is this guy who has 10 acres at this time in Runda, and he has another 100 acres, and then he's selling at 60, that is 600, just like that, you know. So he happens to be the son of a former minister of Jomo Kenyatta. And that made me wonder, did Kenyatta and the course that were there then set a foundation for this country for prosperity, or it was just about accumulation of wealth? I read somewhere in one of the books, I think autobiography of one of the Kenya leading guys, that Kenyatta, when he was out of jail in Gatundu, people built a hut for him. But today, look at the families that are leading this country. So that was also affirmed when I went to that side of Baringo up to, the North Rift, that is Kapedo, those side of Chemologot, up to Turkana, back to Suguta Valley, Baringo. You will see that it's because the people who come from there were not in government. And those in government never realize that as long as those people are poor, there will be no security in that part of the world. I saw the current interior minister, someone I respect, a very scholar, but the approach is taken to go to the north. You cannot answer a development question with guns and bullets. As long as Kenya is divided, I have come through Lusaka Road this morning and part of Jogo Road. And I'm told my taxi guy was telling me, these guys, the police officers come there at 4 a.m. not to make sure they control traffic, but to collect 100 shillings. So that is the kind of government we have. And that's what makes me think this has to change through the people. We, the people, have to change.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So the government is not structured the way it ought to be. The theory of government and the practice of government are different.
The theory of government we took was one that is going to only enrich the elites. I have lived in Holland and I've lived in Norway. I know when governments work. I know when systems work. It's not that the white man is better than us. He's just more disciplined than us. I was told by a Norwegian minister in 2013 that the problem with Africa is the cake is too small. So when you eat it, your hands will just cross each other. Our cake is so big that we don't even realize we have stolen.
Abdullahi, you mentioned something very interesting. That just taking the security issue, and perhaps we can also apply this same principle or idea across board. And you say that so long as people are poor, the security will always be compromised. Can we, because then look at, if we're talking about the way in which we see things today, and you talk about maybe a breakdown in the structure of governance, we can apply this across board. So long as people are poor, the health will be compromised. So long as people are poor, education will be compromised. So long as people are poor. So what I hear you saying is that the very livelihoods, the very ABCs of livelihood is what needs to be taken care of and governed. Are you saying that all these other things will fall in place if the very livelihood of the Kenyan is taken care of?
Why is it that there are no prisoners in Holland and the jails are just used for cultural activities? They were just human beings. The underlying thing is, I'm a good fan of, I contribute to News Central in Nigeria, Lagos, and I'm a fan of most of the writers from Nigeria. Ken Saro-Wiwa wrote a story called Man Must Live. And he gives hope of a guy who was working in a train station. I'm telling you, my dear, as long as there is poverty, there will be crime. As long as there is poverty. I wrote an article back in 2007 about packing boys along River Road up to Isli. You talk to those boys, those guys have hopes. They don't want to be jogoras or packing boys. I camped there a whole day from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Ate food with them back in 2009. Maybe I was just this young, idealistic young man who was a camel herder, who was going to school, who wanted to change, to see some things different, because I come from Asabito County. Up to today, it has no grid of electricity.
You come from?
Asabito, in Mandera County. It has no electricity, 60 years after independence. My dad does not have electricity. You see, yet we have a government that is richer than almost 6-7 countries combined in our neighbors. So, my sister, as long as people are poor, poverty is the breed of insecurity. Whether they like it or not, health is going to be affected because there is no hospital in Pokot, part of Pokot. There is no hospital in part of Suguta Valley. I was there. I've gone. I've seen. People live in thatched bed houses. Kids look very malnourished. They have very big stomach. It is because the people in leadership failed them.
When you say there's no hospital in Pokot, because let's get down to the nitty-gritty of these things, Abdullahi, because that is it, isn't it? That we cannot speak broad-based about things when we're hoping for solutions that are going to solve the very nitty-gritty, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes when we have these conversations, sitting with friends and discussing some of these things that are very important, sometimes we may face the temptation of glossing over things and just saying it because, it sounds sensationalist. So for us to really understand When you say there's no hospital in Pokot, what are we saying?
What I'm saying is that we are not talking about towns or places that have access to hospitals. Let's talk numbers. If you look at the current, let's go to places like Bomet or Mandera. In Bomet in this year, job advertisement of 293 slots, 23,044 applied.
23,000 people applied for.
23,044 applied for 293 slots. Okay? 233 had PhDs. 698 had masters. Education survey done by National Treasury, over 80,000 graduates are produced. Kenya National Bureau of Standard in 2021 March said half of jobless Kenyans are looking for work, are aged between 18 and 64, demoralized by reduced opportunities in difficult economy, business scale down employment. In flat access did survey in 2022, 28.5% of Kenyans do casual laborers. 82.3% are informal sector. So literally, we have a country where people are struggling to feed themselves. The Russian president said Africa is a cemetery. If you look at it deeply, Kenyans die looking for food. If 83% of Kenyans are in the informal sector, which means they get monies only for food, or maybe for rent if they're lucky. They don't go for holidays, they don't go for anything. The people who control the finances, I'm coming to my sister's question. The people who control the economy in this country are 1%. 9,000 people control 99.9% of the wealth in this country. Okay? Four individuals are richer than 22 million Kenyans. So are we sensationalizing things, or we have... Kenya is not Nairobi or Mombasa or Nakuru. Kenya is bigger than those towns. So if you want to see the poverty level of this country, how AIDS is affecting people in parts of Nyanza, how Jigas is affecting parts of Central, how drought is affecting people in northern Kenya, it's because of the people in government are very comfortable. So, do they think about the next generation, or they, like now what's happening with Raila and Ruto? They're two guys from different background, but both of them are very rich today. Ruto can never associate himself with poverty anymore. He's left that bracket. His kids have grown up with opulence. I am a friend to his daughter Shalin. She runs a hotel in Western Hotel, so she's left the bracket. Raila's daughter grew up in opulence. Her grandfather was a deputy president. My grandfather was a camel herder. I didn't enjoy the opulence of a country I lived in. Okay, he was born in 1907. My dad was born in 1958. I was born 40 years ago. My son is 14 years old. We have never seen electricity in our village. So are we sensationalizing things, or Kenya is bigger than this studio, or Nairobi, or...
So is it a values issue? I have a discussion with a friend called Martha, and she says it could be a values issue. Are we looking at a values issue? That you can be in a position of governance in a country and see this vast difference between two sets of people who live in the same boundaries, all known as the sovereign state of Kenya, and you see such a thing on a daily basis, and you're in a position to make a difference about it, but you choose not to. Is it not then a values problem?
I don't think it's a value problem. If you look at Kiambu, 99% of the houses that collapse come from Kiambu County. But in Isli, there is no collapse in buildings. It's still in Nairobi. It's because the biggest mall that is coming up in Isli is being handled by a Chinese firm. Okay? Mm-hmm. It has, I think, 380 toilets. So it's that big. The guys who are handling are not Kenyans. Mm. The foundation of this country was based on greed. The moment Kenyatta came out, the guys who were around him, they started stealing from us. They started accumulating material wealth. Okay? My grandfather used to say, I was with him. He died at around 95. I used my grandfather more than my father, because I stayed with him for 6 years. He was a very intelligent man. Being schooled and being intelligent are two different things. Mm-hmm. Being school, you've gone to school, you are taught maths, algebra, loci, this, that, then you've learned.
Being formally schooled.
Formally schooled.
He was schooled.
He was schooled in his own rights. Now, formally, we have gone to school, and most of the people now confuse intelligence and informal education with maths and English. He used to tell me, Daddy, my son, what do you consider wealth? And he told me, if you can sleep well, you have what to eat, you're healthy, your kids are healthy, you're a very wealthy man. I took that. Today I'm a father of 5, and I consider my health my wealth. I don't so much look for a lot of money. A lot of money in the sense that you want to steal millions and billions. No. What I have is enough. If I can send a bill to my family, I can take care of my mom and dad, and then maybe have few change of my 2,000 postpaid. Sometimes on 20 or 25 you go broke.
So it's a values issue then, Abdullahi. What Ndu is posing here, is it a value issue? It could be a value issue.
But now,
if the foundation was wrong, then we lost the value.
How do we? I think it's a culture. Because if the guys who got independence, the Kenyattas and co, will sit and say, what kind of a dream do we want to have for this country? If we had roads from Mandera to Nairobi, which are tarmacked, we will not even need much from government. People will do business and thrive. We cannot transport avocado to Mandera because it will take 36 hours to reach there. So the foundation of a good house will determine, and I've told you an example. That's why 90% of the houses in Kiambu will keep collapsing, because they are firing the engineers and bringing some amateurs to be handling things, and the houses in Isli are not collapsing. So 2 sets of Kenyans with 2 sets of culture. A culture of saying, we cannot have millions and billions go into this building and then in 10 years it's down because of an error or this or that. So the foundation laid for the country is that we have people who are very rich in terms they have stolen from Kenyans. We know the salary of a member of parliament. We know the salary of MCAs. We know the salary of our staff. I have an accountant from Mandera County government who is living in a 10 million house in Mandera.
He's an accountant with the county government.
County government. He's an accountant. That guy does not earn a third of what I earn, or a third of what I make. But I don't have a 10 million house in Mandera, let alone having a house after working for 15 years. We are still saving. We've bought a plot, but you haven't built. Yet this young man, he's barely 30. Yet the guys who have stolen from us, if you go to Indian hospitals or Turkey hospitals, 70% or 65% are Somalis who are Muslims. The clients, they have pressure, cardiac problem, cancer,
non-communicable diseases.
God is pure, and you must be pure for you to survive. If you've stolen, even as a Muslim who believes so much in the Quran, we are told that do not steal from people, do not commit injustices, be truthful. There are 3 principles that are guiding Islam. There is a difference between what is said and what people are practicing. Be truthful, be honest, be trustworthy. If these 3 are missed in any society, then we have a problem. That's why in today Nigeria is having issues, because I normally say when Nigeria sneezes, we all catch the cold. It's the biggest economy. If we had a very stable Nigeria, stable South Africa, stable Kenya, where people will work on a formula where I can drive my old Nissan Patrol from here to Lagos. That's not the dream these guys had. These guys had dreams of stealing, taking it to the Swiss banks in Finland and Zurich and those places. So what now has happened is that they have died. They have left us with their kids. Their kids are still stealing. Okay? They are still richer than us. Rich now in terms of monetary value.
Right.
So, my dear, as long as we the people have allowed to take bribes. 2019-16, I was in Embu, a village called Manyata. I was told the MCA came there, he started dishing out 50 shillings and 100 shillings. Because of the conditions that were created in 1963 up to today, Kenyans have no alternative. They have to beg.
So you're saying even that guy of yours in Mandera is stealing because he has no alternative?
No, I'm saying
he lives in a 10 million shillings house, yet his salary is nowhere close to that. He has no choice but to steal the money.
No, I'm saying the culture and the foundation we set in 1963 has still been devolved, where people consider...
So it has spread across the country.
We only devolved it.
Okay. Let's take a break.
Yeah.
We'll continue the conversation shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
With you this and every week, the morning is Eric Latif, Ndu Oko, and CT Muga. So you're saying the foundations of the country. But look, we have had a change of government, or at least we participate in changing government every 5 years since that 1963. And the current crop of leaders is not the same as the crop of leaders that were there during independence. So why is it that then you haven't seen a shift or a change in how government responds to people's needs over time?
Eric, what have we actually changed?
The individuals that lead.
Yes, we have changed the individuals, but if you look at Abdullahi's argument, he's not talking about the individuals, he's talking about a structure. He's talking about a system that was set up, it has entrenched, and I dare say it has now, it's like it's given birth, it's expanded, it's acquired even new qualities that it didn't have before. If there were ills, they are multiplied. If there were inequalities, they are multiplied. If there was iniquity, it's multiplied. But it started, the genesis was that structure. So it doesn't matter who comes into power.
No, even you look at Musalia Mudavadi.
In the 60 years prior to independence, there was a system that was introduced in the country. Okay? And the people upon whom that system was imposed rejected that system. They did not buy into the system. And that's why they pushed back. And they wanted a change in the system. Now you say that those that came in and represented, this new change were still carrying on some of the things that were there in the past. But the next 60 years, which is up to today, why haven't we seen a repulsion from the citizens against this system? If the system is so bad, if a generation of 60 years saw Kenyans pushing back and wanting to overthrow that system, why hasn't the next generation of 60 years seen that this is wrong and want to overthrow it?
When do citizens overthrow people? Is when they are empowered. Okay? Kenya, you're saying some of those guys are not alive, are not around. Musalia Mudavadi is the son of a former minister. Uhuru Kenyatta is the son of a former president. Raila, his father was the deputy president. Ruto was a son brought up by Moi and Biwott and the Kalenjin leaders. Okay? This choreographing image of telling us he's a hustler. No, if he was not going to State House and singing in choir in front of Moi, he would not have gotten the opportunity to thrive up to like many other Kalenjins. So many of the culture that was there, as my brother has said, is this. I read a lot about what Koigu Amero about negative ethnicity. It was planted. Now, if you plant a pawpaw and you're expecting a banana, then you're sick. So, the culture we entrenched in our government is a culture of impunity, a culture of dehumanizing others. Look at what's happening with our leaders now.
My pushback is this, Abdullahi. Why is it that the majority don't rise up against this minority? Because you'll agree with it's a minority. The names that you're mentioning are just a few.
Who are the majority?
The majority of the rest.
Tribes,
the have-nots.
The have-nots.
No, the tribes of the have-nots, or the tribes in Kenya?
The people of Kenya.
The people of Kenya are divided along ethnic lines.
Why are they divided along ethnic lines?
It's because of the government that came then. You see, we have people who are majority and we have people who are minority. We cannot control that there are more Kikuyus in Kenya than Somalis. Now, if the number has been used to access power and deny other people rights, who is to blame? We blame the majority.
Can I shift the argument a little bit?
Shift it.
You see, Inequality or iniquity doesn't actually know tribe. And what Abdullahi is talking about is something that the person who talked about at great length was Ngugi wa Thiong'o. When you talk about whether it's petals of blood or you talk about what he called the Wabenzi tribe, okay? That was his way of looking at the haves and the have-nots. Now, at some level, they coalesce and they actually form one community. So, when you talk about the ethnicity and the ethnic lines, now that's a tool. That's a tool that is used to keep people in their respective brackets, and you lace it with the promises and a smattering of small elements of progress. So it isn't all negative, but you see, what is muted is because you see people who you can identify with. The inequalities that we had before independence, where it was clear these are white people and we are not, it's muted.
Yeah.
So even when similarities of inequity and inequalities exist, they are not as glaring because it is your own people perpetrating it. So you don't actually see it in that light. And yet it is not really different in principle.
I'll tell you something that happened in Mandera some 2 months ago. The governor made a promise of giving free secondary school. Now, I went to court and said there's nothing free. It's always paid for by somebody. Because there's a reason why we have a constitution and other statutory laws. Secondary education comes under the Ministry of Education under fourth schedule in Article 189. But the people were mobilized to fight me, and even some started cursing me. I told them, look, this is a good thing, yes, but it's a function of the national government. Why are we wasting the small amount of money we have on a function that is already national? Why don't you engage the national government through the Ministry of Education? There is no data available, authentic data available from these schools, because Muga's secondary school can say he has 1,000. You don't take things for face value. You send people, especially the M&E department, to go and do a head count. And then we go there and then find there are 250. But the guy is pocketing 800 students' school fees. So you see, we have accepted things in the face value. So you started critiquing, you will be cast, quote unquote. Now, what I'm saying is that after even getting devolution today, the word marginalization is no longer in the vocabulary of the North. I'm now working on a project, devolution in the North, which we want to do 3 sets of documentaries. One is the history of the question of development in northern Kenya, where we, among other things, look at Secession Paper 10 of 1965, among others. Then we have 10 years of devolution. Now, Mandera County might have received between 120 to 140 billion in the last 10 years. You combine that with Wajir, Mandera, Garissa, maybe we will be shy of $500 billion in northern Kenya.
In 10 years.
In 10 years.
Yeah.
Yet the first 50 years we only got 9 billion. And in the first year we got 9 billion. What does that? We have devolved the elites from Nairobi to Mandera. The people we elected leaders, some of them were pilots, accountants, this, that. They had a lot of wealth. But today, I'm told one of the leaders has land in Lavington that is worth 250 million. One. So if you make some queries, you'll be getting few properties in South Sea, few in Otawala. So the guy is thinking rich. What does that tell you about the culture we're still going back to we created? If my community, my people, as in people from northern Kenya, especially Somalis and Muslims, were saying the Christian-led government is always marginalizing us, Mandera now is the 3rd highest funded county after Nairobi and Turkana. We are getting more money than Kiambu. What needs to happen is this. You engage the professions from there and say, we know our problems. Where do we start from? I was for the idea from 2013, I've been taking the county government of Mandera to court. From 2013. And I've been telling them, let us invest in agriculture first. Let us invest in livestock. These are the 2 breadwinners for our people. When we do enough farming, you do irrigation, you do dry land farming, You give them fertilizers, you give them seeds. We come to the Ministry of Education, Agriculture in Nairobi. We take experts, we take the soil, we test, invest little money. Then let's start with what we can grow and what we need: maize, millet, sorghum, beans, this, that. The first 1 year, we invested like 250 million. Do you know Mandera was exporting onions to South Sudan? The first 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
We were exporting onion
To South Sudan.
Because they subsidized the prices for fertilizers. The government was buying from them. So the government created the structures. Now, why is my argument always agriculture, even for Kenyan government? When you invest in agriculture, you're going to create a healthy communities or healthy society. Kids in my village will have onions to eat, tomatoes to eat, pawpaws to eat. We already have protein, enough milk, and so we only need vegetables and fruits. Mm-hmm. We have enough carbohydrates, we have enough protein. What comes out of that is once we satisfy the subsistence part of it, we can now do commercial, invest in 100 acres, 50 acres, and then empower them. But you know why they will not do that? Because that's not where you cash money. That is the software part of governance. That's where you're not going to get money. Is in construction, infrastructure.
Also, the people want to see those things.
Do they?
The pressure from the citizen. The pressure from the citizen is
my brother Eric. Kenyans don't know. They only talk of their rights. They know their responsibility and obligations. When did we do civic education from 1963? When? This is a community or a country that literacy is not that high. This is a country where 22 million are living on less than $1. What is a priority for them? It's that day. So if the governor is going there with some money, we are going to build a road. Does my mom know how to ask what is the value of road between these and these, and what is the value chain, exchange of commodities? First of all, do we have informed citizens in this country?
Are they satisfied with the government that they have?
How do you measure that?
With how they react, how they respond to the government.
What do they know if you're reacting? I mean, if you're paying...
You can tell how people...
If you have a dog at the door...
You can tell people's satisfaction level or dissatisfaction levels with the government in every 5 years. You can see how they are voting, the pattern they are voting, the conversation which they are supporting at the election time. If people are supporting a certain conversation in election time, which is coming and giving them a different... It's because that politician or that political grouping has listened to the people and has gotten what the people are saying.
No, I disagree. In northern Kenya, elders come with money, they pay people, they tell them this is what we want, and that is it.
So you see? So don't blame it on a system.
Oh, but that is the system.
That is the system.
Not a system that was adopted at independence.
Oh, yes, it is.
That is a system that you developed.
It was.
It is.
That is a system that you developed.
Who was the most powerful man during Kenyatta's time?
It's a system that you've developed over time.
Listen,
and
my
you've
brother.
Taken in.
Who was Koinange? Who are the Michukis? Who are these and that? The elders at that time were just wearing suits. It's the same elders who have in kanzus in Mandera. Whatever happens in Nairobi, if there is, cold in Nairobi and then Nairobi breathe, we catch cold in Mandera. Whether we like it or not, the foundation we laid for this country, we will have this argument every day. The foundation laid for this country is that when Libya, Muammar Gaddafi came to power, he changed Libya. And then the West brought us human rights. Is it human rights or rights of human? Which one is which? You see? Is it human rights or the rights of human? Which one is which? Now today, Libya was the only country in Africa that had no debt with IMF or World Bank or anyone. We Africans thought Mugabe, that guy was sick. Because everyone who thinks ambitiously, that guy wanted to bring African, World Bank or African Bank, a lot of currency in gold because it will not depreciate. If you look at the economical things he was thinking about, and then white men came with their planes, they bombed Gaddafi. Today, Libya is a shell of its former self.
Absolutely.
So let us not choreograph with a lot of English what needs to happen. We are Africans, we have gone to school, we know English, yes. we have a culture that we need to integrate with our English
But
so that it helps us.
and that culture has to start with not necessarily looking and blaming a few people and naming names and dropping names all the time. You know, the Kenyattas here, the Odingas there, the who there, the who there.
If there is a daughter who is a prostitute in the house, we blame the father.
If those names started gaining prominence with, like you say, the gaining of independence, I look back at the 60 years prior, like I've just said. In the 60 years prior, the Mzungu came, the Mzungu tried to bring in the tribal chiefs and calling them paramount chief and all this and the other, but the people rebelled. The people wanted something different. The people came together and they pushed for something different. In the last 60 years, are the people pushing for something different? Are the people of the last 60 years more exposed, like you say, than the people of the previous 60 years? I would say yes. Are the people in Mandera today more exposed than the people in Mandera in 1945? Yes, they are. So why is it that the people then could rise up against a system and the people now cannot rise up against the system?
Is it? And I often say that, look, if you look at the stuff that revolution is made of, it doesn't matter where you look. It doesn't matter whether you're looking at 1940s, what is today the United States of America. It doesn't matter whether you're looking in Western Europe. The stuff of revolution seems to have the same thing, that it looked at the people who were at the very end of their tether. That they reached a point where they said, you know what? We cannot take this anymore. And we're either going to flow into the streets and demand something else, or we're going to look for the emperor and cut off his head. And that is what happened. And so oftentimes, if you see that change has not come from the majority of the people who would seek for that change, then one would assume that either they're comfortable with the status quo or they still have some tether left in the rope.
Yes.
Or they're enduring it because there is something about human beings and the element of hope that resides in us. Now, there are leaders who are chosen or are accepted. Now, when, as you say, there's an expiry date to this leadership, which means their non-performance has become glaringly pertinent and obvious, what then happens is new leadership comes up. Because if the consistency, if you can trace back and say, we've had this leadership for this long, this is a narrative we've heard, like the water, schooling, disease being eradicated, it's the same story. Okay, we've heard it. People say, no. Isn't it about time this thing actually genuinely came to an end? One must never underestimate the power of a narrative. And when you have a power of a narrative being based on hope, when you're being told it will happen, and then you see bits and pieces that resonate and you feel perhaps this is actually true, or you see a semblance of what you think is a sign of progress being fronted, one doesn't quite weigh what is genuinely possible for them. One puts up with what is available. Now, if I hear what my brother Abdullahi is saying here, he's saying, something, that's the short end of the stick. What is actually your due as a citizen of the country is what you haven't received since independence. You've been given installments of it, but not what you actually should actually get. Because if you did, then this would be a different country.
Abdullah, let me ask you something as you're going to answer that question. Do you think, if we're going to go with this, that there are folks who've been stealing the very soul of the country, whether it's in money, land, whatever it is, and they are in positions to teach this civic education that we are speaking of, to give the very due to citizens that is theirs since independence or even before that, do you really think that they would take up the responsibility of teaching Kenyans, of showing them what exactly is their due, if they are busy putting most of it into their pocket?
It's not even their role to teach. It is the role of other Kenyans who think differently. Why do you think J.M. Kariuki was killed? Why do you think Pinto was killed? When you start bringing systems that is contrary to what the people want, trying to deflect the narrative, then you're a threat to the state, quote unquote, because you're a threat to their interest. Is that I was asking a lawyer the other day, was the question of marginalization addressed in the 2010 Constitution? It was.
Yes.
But is it the problem we have, as I said on NTV, is it the law or the men who are implementing the law? The men and women. This is a country that is an age of, if you can buy a judge, why do you need a lawyer? Okay. And I've been around that corridor for a very long time now. 10 years I've been around that corridor. There are lawyers who are brokers. There are deals that go down at 2 a.m. I'm still coming back to the culture. If the father, I have children now. My daughter is 4 years old. Every morning when I wake her up and she's going to Duxie fast, I tell her, don't lie to people. Don't steal from someone. If you want something, come back, I'll buy for you. Don't abuse anyone. Someone fights you, report it to me. You asked me, we have a different sets of people. Lumumba will say the forest might have changed, but the monkeys just give birth to more monkeys. This is a country that has, especially right now, I was talking to somebody and say, so-and-so bought a Lexus. And then I asked him, how much is it? And then he told me the second-hand one is 12, 13 million. The new one is 20 something. And then I told him, does it give birth to a child? And then he told me, no. Where does it sleep at night? Does it sleep in bedroom? He said, no, it's put in the parking. Okay. So, okay. You see, Lexus, according to him, or iPhone, is an achievement. And that's why you find the people with phones staying late up to midnight. I don't. I use the phone. The phone doesn't use me. People have become slaves to material stuff, where instead of living for something and wanting to achieve something with your life, you're doing this, you're doing that. Now, this country needs men and women. Look at what the Controller of Budget was telling me the other day, was telling us that 15 billion was signed off in 26 minutes through a WhatsApp call. That is a constitutional office. So it was about her character and her zeal as a person. It had nothing to do with the law, because the law says any unauthorized withdrawal, she has, the powers to reject. If the president is asking her to do this, you just ask you, please put it in writing and then seal it and then doing that and that. So the character of the men and women we have in Africa is the problem. Unless we will have men and women who have seen other parts of the world and will come back and say, you know what, this is not how they are doing in Singapore. This is how, rather Sri Lanka. In Norway, in 1945, there were 3 million Norwegians. But today, they have wealth to feed their country in the next 200 years. So the men and women we put in those offices will matter more than the law. The law is just written.
The law is just something.
It's just written in a paper.
Abdullahi, this conversation must continue. Thank you very much for joining us today.